Hi, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours. If you are watching YouTube, you can find more about what we do at officehours.global. First hour is general discussion about media and virtual production. Next hour is something we'd like to spend a little more time on. A video. This is an experiment. A video came out last week from AJR. I like the band a lot. But the main reason we did it is just the video production quality is really high. And this is a really cool band because they say that they make all of their albums in their living room, which might be true. But they make their videos with a lot more gear. And so we've got some behind the scenes that we're going to show. No one's coming on from their production crew or maybe this will be enough to get them to come on, but no one's coming on. But we're going to cut through the video a little bit and take a look at it and talk about some of the production because it's pretty interesting. So anyway, we'll take a look at that in the second hour. And now we'll jump into the first hour with questions. And Bill, what do we have?
Our first one comes from Larry Engelhardt in Chicago, Illinois. He says, a school has asked me to live stream an event to their YouTube channel. For obvious reasons, they don't want me to have their YouTube login info. How can I send the live view of the program, to their channel so their members can see it?
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, there's a couple ways. One is restream.io and Caster. These are two plans that allow you to take a URL so this one's Caster, and why I like Caster is because it'll also do SRT. But if you're here in restream.io, you can say set up for OBS or Zoom, and then you would copy this RTMP and they would give it to you. So they would have to have the account. So they would add their YouTube channel here so their credentials are nice and secure. And then they would give you this copy and copy. So they would copy the RTMP URL and the stream key and pass that to you. And then they're in charge of pushing it to the encoder. So they have no qualms about, so they'll be able to see your stream coming in and monitor it. Because once the stream comes in, you can see it here. And then they can push it to their encoder from there and decide on their accord when they want it to actually go live. So that's one option.
Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, Restream is probably the way that I would go to, but boy, does this make me nervous. Like, just straight away, the idea that I would broadcast to something that I couldn't directly affect. Yeah, I don't like it.
Yeah, it has its issues. Now the reality is if they create the live event inside of YouTube, they can also do exactly what Guy said, which is just copy the stream links into it. Then you would turn your encoder on, then they see it in preview, and they can hit go right in YouTube. Because all you need for the RTMP is the really just the link, because the stream the URL stays the same all the time for A and B. But the URL is all, the stream key is all you really need from YouTube. But that means that they have to activate it. Now, I think that the advantage of Restream the Guy was showing was that it'll automatically, I think it's an API, so it'll automatically start the event. Is that right? Guy? You
could set it up that way, but yeah, the bummer is that if they have a persistent stream key and if you hand that out, you can take over somebody, so that's the downside. So that's why I like to have that buffer in there. And Restream's been really solid. So lately, I mean, it had some of its ups and downs, but it's been solid lately. So I trust it.
Another option that I think works, I think it didn't work for a while, and now it seems to work, is that they can make you a moderator. So a moderator is not going to give you the login. It's just going to give you certain access, basically everything short of it'll give you everything short of admin. And now for a while you couldn't start live events, but I think we fixed that because I know that Jeffrey right now is building our live events, and and he's a moderator for our channel. So anyway, so that's that's another way to do it, and that's how I do it. So with almost all of our clients, I say, just make me a moderator, and it's an editor in Facebook. It's something else. You have this kind of. Almost all of them have a class of someone who can work with the channel. I will echo Jason's concerns. If someone doesn't give me access to building and running the event, they're going to get like 3 emails telling them that something could go wrong. Like, just so you know, I'm not going to tell them in a meeting. I'm going to send an email. These are what we call CYAs. CYAs of like, this could go very wrong, and it'll just be like, we may not get a start. We may not make it work. If anything goes wrong, you won't know what to do. Like there's a lot of, like, I outline everything I can possibly imagine that will go wrong, because it is the highest percentage of failure that I've had in events over the last decade is someone not giving me direct access to where the video is going. So anyway, so that's we warn people very often and and relatively drowning not waving kind of thing. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Mitch Hill in Wilmington, Delaware. Mitch says, how would you use the available metadata from a Sony camera/lens combo in post-production?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Was chatting with Travis on After Hours. We both have FX3 Sony cameras, and we're using the GM series of lenses. And what's kind of neat about the Sony series, I'm sure it's available on other high-end cameras, is that the camera records the lens information or lens data. It could be everything from the aberrations that may be there because of a lens position. All lenses have them. Or it could be a steady shot that you're trying to smooth out in post-production. So the question basically comes around to how do you get that metadata so that you can use it in the post-production side? And I, in the past, have used Catalyst and then exported the file into my editing system, but I don't know the other ways to do it.
Go ahead, Bill.
Well, since I'm a Final Cut editor, one of the things that they built that program on was the flow of metadata through things. And the person who taught me the most about it was my friend Phil Hodgetts at Intelligence Assistance. And he clued me in the early days to the fact that camera metadata, that which is originated by whatever the shooting device is, if you pay attention to your workflow and create a workflow that understands metadata and doesn't drop metadata at various stages. And it's very easy to do that. For example, just copying files onto a hard drive rather than imaging the entire card can lose a ton of metadata because the files often don't carry as much as the card did originally. But if you do these things correctly, the metadata will be accessible if the program allows it. And one of the things when you're talking about things like lens corrections and things like that, there are a lot of small tools from like Canon where the lens data will be encapsulated in a picture. And if you use the automated correct pin cushioning, correct distortion in the lens, there'd be an automated little subroutine that once you click on that, the picture will actually get better, legitimately better, because it used that metadata from the camera to know what lens it was, and it knows how to correct it because of the intelligence built into the system. So metadata is very important, and the fact that it's not exposed to you is probably relative to the way they designed that program. It's getting better and better, and boy, it's a powerful hidden feature, this reading and passing along of metadata.
Is the metadata frame by frame, or is it just a single?
Depends on the system. Phil has Phil wrote a white paper on this.
Specifically about the Sony.
Yeah, on the Sony, when you get the files from the disk, it'll have a folder with all that information on it. So you got to make sure it all goes like Bill said.
Is it actual frame by frame data? Like if you're zooming, will it tell you what it?
It's telling you exactly what's going on a literal basis.
Interesting, Courtney. I'm sorry, Sky. Sorry.
I just real quick. My use of metadata is because I make sure I understand what the footage is, because I do offline, making the file smaller to use it on older systems, and then go back into the online. So that's where my value for metadata is to match up the different file versions in post-production.
Yeah, it depends on the camera. It depends on where the metadata is stored and what format you're recording in. If you're using MXF, a lot of times that metadata is carried along with the file. You just have to have a supporting software that will read those metadata chunks and import them into your editorial package. And a lot of times people like Alex who transcode everything on the way in, that you have to have a transcoding program that can read that metadata and export it into a file format your edit software will understand. So careful if you're transcoding. That's usually where the metadata is lost. Or if you're on a lot of import ingest programs for Avid and Final Cut, we'll just drop the metadata and never see it again. So you'd have to link it back to the original files in their original format that haven't been transcoded to maintain the metadata to refer back to it.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, Courtney's exactly right. With Sony, generally you use Catalyst and then you export it into your editing system.
What kind of metadata are you using?
I'm not, but we were discussing theoretically how we could do it. I think Travis was talking about using it to help improve the steady shot, so it wasn't quite so artificial looking, and the lens knows, I guess, its position and in the world along with the camera.
But that's just lens to body. I don't think that's recorded.
Oh yeah, it's definitely recorded. That data is there. The question is, how do you get it in your workflow so it propagates out?
The accelerometer data is available in the metadata.
It is on the
couldn't tell you,
6K. I
'cause
mean,
I don't
that's
use it.
kind of what catalyzed this, right? I mean, Blackmagic made a big deal about like, oh yeah, all the camera motion data is now available.
Yeah, the problem really with that, the problem with using the accelerometer data is that it's not accurate enough to be pixel accurate. And if it's not accurate enough to be pixel accurate, it kind of doesn't matter to me because I'm going to end up doing an optical track anyway. So the issue is that the accelerometer doesn't have enough zeros on the end of after the point to get to a point where the problem is that a fraction of a degree off is going to be many pixels in the distance that are moving, and so and this is the problem that you saw with accelerometer data in the early days of AR. This is when people started doing it like 5-7 years ago, was that everything kind of floated on top of everything because they were using the accelerometer data to match it in. And when it really fixed it is when Apple gave them and Google gave them libraries to do optical tracking in real time, because then it just it found features and locked them and did it in real time. But that's when, but the accelerometer data, I'd be really surprised if a consumer product that was outputting accelerometer data would be useful. Like even when you look at the high-end Moses and Stipe and everything else, those are all optical. They're not. They're really
might just
expensive.
it might just be important points like your eyes or whatever else in your face.
They're either optical or they're capturing points. But I don't think that. I mean, I will say flat out, I've never used metadata from a camera. I mean, I've tried to use metadata from the camera, but we found that it was so much work it was so dirty that it didn't make any sense. Go ahead, Bill.
I think if you're trying to do a specific thing, often you can't because they didn't plumb the whole thing in. But I'm going to do this story real quick. But when I bought my DSLR, a friend told me to put my name in it. I forgot about that for years. Many years later, I did a program in Final Cut that used stills from that camera. I eventually finished that program, mastered it, uploaded it to Vimeo. It sat there for 2 years. I had caused to download that file later, and I brought it into a little program called Media Info because I was trying to remember what I encoded in it. And then sure enough, there was a listing for cameraman and my name was there. And it kind of freaked me out at first, but I realized that the metadata I had put in my DSLR 3 years or 4 years before had been preserved through that entire stream and ended up in the final.
That kind of metadata is useful. Like, I'll lens information, like us cross-checking our camera logs and saying, oh, this is the lens that was attached. Now, zoom information is not particularly interesting to me, but I don't, like if I'm shooting effects, I don't use zooms, like, because that's a disaster. And so if you're that like me seeing that it's a 35 millimeter Canon lens or whatever on there on that sensor makes it a lot easier for me to figure out a lot of things. So that metadata we use all the time. But
I often look at
ISO
ISO and aperture, which are all encoded in that stream too. So you can get a lot of lens data that passes through.
I'll correct myself. That kind of metadata I use all the time. The metadata that is like actual, like this is where the position of the camera was, or this is the zoom, or anything else, I don't use. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I haven't seen accelerometer data show up in there. Usually it's just lens size, f-stop, focus, and any... if you have a head that reports it, you can get pan tilt information if it has optical encoders in it. So that's
something like
and GPS coordinates if it's exposed to GPS.
Yeah, and something like a Panasonic 150 is going to put out a lot of telemetry data that is what it actually is, and we definitely have used that in Unreal and stuff like that. That kind of thing works because it's not an accelerometer; it's where it is. It's like it's reporting this is my rotation. Next question.
Next question comes from Larry Engelhardt again in Chicago. I want to run video and audio from a video camera in one room to an HDTV in an overflow room via HDMI. In the past, when the camera and screen seemed well separated, I've gotten Oh, even when the camera and screen seemed well separated, I've gotten feedback squeal. How can I avoid that?
Courtney?
Well, you have to either isolate the acoustical noise between the two rooms, which means close the door or turn the speakers down, or be careful if you're using an HDMI cable and the TV set that it's plugged into doesn't have audio return in it, because usually one of those HDMI inputs on the TV will have reverse audio. It'll send audio back down the HDMI cable, and if whatever you have that plugged into is somehow getting that audio return signal from the TV, it can be fed back if you have an internal feedback path. So check the HDMI plug that you're plugging into on that remote TV and make sure it's not doesn't have an ARC on it, audio return channel. And then, of course, isolate the speakers, turn them down to avoid feedback.
Go, Mitchell.
I was just going to confirm what he just said. The ARC data that's coming back on the back.
Yeah, the other thing is you can do what we call ring the room out. It's ringing at a very specific frequency, and what you want to do is find that frequency and then pull it down with a high Q. So you want to go in there in your equalizer and pull down that, depending on whether it's software or hardware, pull that down. And there's a lot of ways you just do a search for removing the ring in a room, but that's possibly what you're getting there, is getting that there. But the best way to do it is to get rid of hearing the other room. I mean, that's what's happening, is it's coming back around. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Joseph Joaquin Mattis in Imperial Valley, California. What are the key things to keep in mind when mixing a podcast? What should my general delivery spec be? Having just done audio for video prior to my podcasting endeavor, I've never produced sole audio content, and Logic Pro, he notes, is his digital audio workstation of choice.
I go, Jason.
I had to think about this one, having done a podcast for so long. It really does become muscle memory. And if you're doing it right, a lot of it has to do with just the way that you set the whole thing up. So, find a quiet room with plenty of space. Be sure that it's actually quiet in there. Listen back to it. Record remote guests and co-hosts separately. Work from an outline to get a good pace delivery. Another important
technical, like edits.
The less you do in the mix, the better.
Yeah.
Record in WAV or, something really high resolution. Be conservative with your input levels, and then, conform to the loudness standards for your delivery. iTunes has them and they're listed. And then, lastly, when you're finished with it, take your project to a place where you listen to a podcast and check that you've mastered it in a way that is pleasing to you. That's what I got.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
In addition to getting a live mix, try to get stems so that you can go back and post. And as you just suggested, using Logic Pro, remix it if it needs that, because invariably something happens that you can't respond to live.
Yeah, definitely record all the different ISO tracks if you can. Like sometimes you can't do that, but you almost always want to do that. You never want to try to just do a live mix. You want to do a live mix so that you can hear it. But it really makes a difference to have all those separate tracks. The other thing that's going to happen, so it's the thing you may have to do is if you have a wild room that's very live and you're getting stuff back, you may have to go through there and pull all the other mics down while one person's talking, because all those mics are going to add up. This is where, like, if you have people talking at Dugan Auto Mix, if you're going to try to just record it all and have it go out and hope that it's all working, a Dugan Auto Mix makes a big difference in your mixer. As far as I cut the Michael Krasny show in Logic, and it's pretty simple. I think that if you get good content coming in, the first thing that I'll do is I tend to look at obviously look at the levels and just move them. I will occasionally use normalize, because there's some limits to what I can grab easily in Logic if something's really quiet. But if you have a really quiet room that you're recording in, you can bring that audio up a lot and still not get into the noise floor, which we try to work on. Double ending if you can, having the other person record. And there's a couple different tools, online tools, and I can't think of them right off the top of my head, that let you set up a podcast with someone. Like we do ours in Zoom, so we can't quite do this yet. But other ones will do double end automatically. So they'll record on both ends and then let people upload it. I want to say DLTV, but I'm not. I think that's one of them. But there's a couple that are pretty good at that. So you look for things that will allow you to record all the ends of the recording, so you can all hear each other, and then you get those separate tracks. And again, clean. The best thing is clean audio. Like really work on clean audio. For the Michael Krasny show, we literally send out mics to everyone. I don't want their web mic, and I don't want their phone, and I don't want their whatever mic they thought was cool for $35. We send them MB7s, all of them. Like it's just part of the cost. Next question.
Craig Kadoki in Toronto, Canada has our next question. Insta360 has just released a webcam, and he's posted the link there, with a large sensor on a 3-axis gimbal. Could this be the webcam that finally takes the crown from the Logitech Brio?
Good, Courtney.
Yeah, I guess it depends on whether or not you can control the color, lots remotely. It bears a striking resemblance to the Osmo Pocket 2, which leads me to believe that DJI must have, the Pocket 2 is on the right there, DJI must have licensed them, or maybe they're building the camera units for Insta360, because it looks identical to that, and I don't think it would look that close unless it was licensed. Otherwise, they'd be sued for all kinds of patent infringement. I've been waiting for something like that to happen, because the Osmo Pocket, I've always thought, would make a great webcam if it had a way of outputting over the USB a clean signal, which it didn't. Only through their software, only through DJI's software would it do that. So maybe they made a deal with Insta360 and packaged it, because it looks like it does a lot of things. It achieves zoom through digital manipulation of the 4K signal into a 1080p window, and it does face tracking, and it pans and tilts and follows you as you move around the room if you have it mounted statically and you're moving. So it has a lot of great features to it. I'd love to see how much it costs. I don't know. Does it say on the
$299?
So it's priced comparably to the Brio.
It's just a little bit more than the Brio. I bought one, so we'll see. So I saw the question, and about 15 minutes later, I was like, well, I'll order one. We'll see what happens. So hopefully by the end of next week, it'll arrive. Go ahead, Sky.
Did you get the little stand kit as well? Did you go ahead and buy that for three
stands?
You have plenty of stands.
I have a lot of stands.
$328 for the tripod kit.
Yeah.
So I was scanning through.
No one should buy it. Let me. I took the hit. Like we'll just wait for a week and we'll bring it on the show, and we'll.
Thanks, Uncle Alex.
I don't know if we'll do the whole show, but we'll spend some time in after hours looking at it. But we'll also talk about it here in office hours, probably by the end of next week.
I have the Brio here, and of course, it's a static piece of equipment that I hardly ever use. But
I mean, again, if we look at sending kits out, it'd be really interesting if we're sending kits out. If I have a screen share, with the other side, now I can make fine adjustments in framing if I need to, if a person's talking. And so it could potentially be pretty exciting. And the 1/2-inch chip, I think, is a really positive direction. I really wished it was a 1-inch chip, but I'll look at a 1/2-inch chip.
Well, again, for $299,
I pay $499 for a 1-inch chip. It would make a huge difference in how it looks. Anyway,
well, one of their features was also that it would scan down on the desk and then invert it and then do the
it'll be interesting to see if that's in
positioning.
It sounds like it's in the processing in the camera. So
yeah,
we're starting to see more webcams come out. This is about to become because of COVID, it's about to become a really hot market, and so it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think that Logitech has leaned back on the Brio for a long time, so I think that it'll be interesting to see if they
resting on their laurels. Are they?
Yes, it'll be interesting to see if they pick up the pace. Next question.
Taylor Sunderhouse in Cincinnati, Ohio is up next. When using Zoom rooms for NDI, what's the minimum amount of power and or specs you'd have on the computer? RAM, CPU, GPU, and so forth. Would you use a virtual or physical computer?
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, it's one of those Mickey answers. It depends. So it depends on how many pulls you want to do. So the basic cheapest one, which I'm using, is the Mac Mini M1. And I've seen these at Costco down under $600. So that's one way, and it will give you 8 1080p pulls. The next one would be a PC, and I have one of those B-Links by Courtney. Yeah. And it's a little wimpy though. The one that I bought is the one with the was like a $600 one that has a dedicated graphics card, and I still wouldn't trust that one just for the 8 pull. So if you're doing 720, get away with it, and it's got 2 Ethernet ports in it, so that's handy. That's another thing is you want 2 separate Ethernet devices. So one for your internet and then another one for NDI. And then the next would be in the cloud, and that would be a CX5 or C5X large 2. So those would be the minimum that we would use. So if you want to do it in the cloud, that would be a separate, what we call a contribution instance. So the CX or the C machine as a contribution, and then you'll have your cutting machine, which would be a G4DN. So you would need some kind of one with a GPU to take in those feeds.
Good, Courtney.
Yeah, I agree with everything there that Guy said. I haven't tried it yet, but I have these new. I got one of these new. This is the Melee Quieter 3. This is the latest implementation of that Quieter fanless PC that has all the ports on it. It has 2 HDMI outs that do 60 hertz 4K, and 4 HDMI 3 ports and a gigabit Ethernet port. I haven't tried it. This one has a 5105 processor in it, whereas the other one was a 4125, which is too wimpy to host very much NDI at all. This one has double the number of execution units in the GPU. So I'm going to try this later sometime. I'll have to put NDI on it. I don't use NDI that much to try it out. But as far as contributing to a Zoom meeting, it might work a lot better than the Quieter 2 did, which was the smaller unit.
Remember what the minimum number of cores was for Zoom to go 1080? What was the?
Supposedly it was more than 4.
More than 4, not 4.
More than 4.
More than 4.
And this is a quad-core Celeron, which means it won't do multi-threading, and it counts threads as cores. So, if you have an i5 or something with a quad-core i5 or a quad-core i7, it will count as 8 cores.
Right.
So, because those are multi-threaded. But the Celerons don't do multi-threading, so they only count as 4 cores. So I think it's an artificial limitation, because if they use the GPU cores in here, it would be different. And of course, Gen 12 Intel, I'm about to buy today a new laptop that uses the new i7 Gen 12, which have 12 cores in them. So
that's great. Next question.
Josh Kaufman, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Up next. Guy, how did your SRT NDI testing go yesterday?
Good, Guy.
Yeah, we had a little fun in after hours last night. So we fired up an AWS instance, and we were running something called SRT Mini Server. So what that app does, and you can rent it, it's like $30 a month. It takes SRT feeds and converts them to NDI. So let that sink in for a sec. SRT to NDI. Now, the cool thing is when you stick it up in the cloud and then you get a bunch of your buddies, go ahead and throw that card back up if you would. You get a bunch of your buddies, and you have them. So number 2 here, we had a phone. Number 1, I think that was a playback from
were
OBS.
they using Larix for the SRT?
So that's what I'm about to say is different people contributed different things. So number 2 was Larix, number 1 was OBS, and then different people. I think Nathan jumped in with OBS, Brandon jumped in with OBS. Yeah, a number of us just started doing OBS. And then there's actually some cool ways in OBS to send SRT. So normally you would just hit stream and type in SRT:// in the IP address. Well, if you go to record, you can do some additional options where you can change the encoder and the wrapper. So you could do MPEG TS transport stream with an NVEC HEVC encoder. So we were playing with that and getting faster response time. So that was part of the test, and that's why it was so much fun. And it was cool to see Zach. Zach hangs out in there every once in a while, and he even got it working. So it was fun because we'd flash a QR code up on the screen. You hit it with your phone, and you're sending up a stream. I mean, like that. So we were building that card was a 9-up super source. So we then flipped it to where we were allowing with NDI Bridge people to pull all 9 feeds back out. So you send up 1 feed, we send you back 9. So it was a lot of fun. It was just like, how can we use this for Office Hours 3.0? We were just, kicking things around of like, how could we let anybody cut the show just by logging into NDI Bridge? You hit join and you get all the NDI feeds. So you can build it however you want. and SRT mini server will do 16. So we could have done 16. So I'd love to do another one of these in a lab scheduled. So maybe Wednesday sometime. Put it in the email newsletter and let everybody prepare.
Let me know.
And okay.
I mean, the big one, because this is not we're not testing an NDI out of after hours, which we do it from 3 to 6 on Friday. But this is just a different, so people could just jump on their phones and.
Yeah, this would be testing SRT ingest. And then if you want, bonus is pull the NDI back out, because that's the other fun part. But seeing your SRT go up, because from my phone, I was sending 4K SRT from my iPhone, and you could see it.
And that was with Lyrics.
Yeah, and you could see it in the specs popping up, and I mean, it looked gorgeous. So really cool stuff.
Yeah, so just let me know for next week what the guy just send me a time frame that you want, and we'll put it in the schedule.
10 to 11 Wednesday.
10 to 11 Wednesday. There we go. Right after Ken finishes his, we're going to slowly fill the whole day up. Ken will do his, Ken every Wednesday does the web development discussion. And so he does that from 9 to 10 on Wednesdays. So 10 to 11. So we're just going to keep on extending the day out. We'll do the SRT. So, but send it to me, guy, because otherwise I'll forget. So, anyway, middle of the show is not a good, middle of any call with me is not a good time, not a good thing to expect me to remember. Anyway, Mitchell.
Guy, did you check your AWS bill yet?
I haven't. So that's the other thing is ingress fees aren't that much, and running the server itself was like $1.50 an hour. So I think we went for maybe 2 hours last night. So maybe $3. But what I want to see is the egress. So I know that when Taylor grabbed onto all my feeds, I could watch it. I was spitting out like 50 megabit, and we ran a speed test. I was able to push out 4,000. So, I mean, that's the crazy thing about the cloud. So we have 3,000 up, 4,000 down. I mean, it's ridiculous speeds. And then, you get the benefits of the cloud, which are, power, you're not owning that machine. We just rented it for $3 and off we go, spin it down and walk away. It's not like I have to, pay the Visa bill for some $5,000 computer that's not being used all the time. So that's some of the benefits, but I'll check out those egress fees and see how much it costs, because I don't want to get hit with too big of a bill if I host these after hours sessions and it's like, $500 for that 2-hour session.
Yeah, exactly. Next question.
Taylor Sunderhouse back again from Cincinnati with this one. A new version of NDI tools was released today. Who uses NDI in their productions? And what do you think about the new NDI router application that was just released?
And this might be newer than what we've looked at. If it was just released, I don't, go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. So one of the things that they kicked out was NDI router. And this will blow your mind, Alex. Are you ready for your mind to be blown?
I'm ready.
So say yes.
Yes.
Okay. He whispers it. So this is NDI router. And let's say, so it opens up like this. So you got your source, you got your destination. So you can see that you can configure these. So this is, me as a source, and then I can plug in a destination. Now, let's say we wanted to turn this into a 40 by 40. Well, we just go over here and hit this little cog in the top right. That puts this little plus symbol, and now I can just add
with the available bandwidth. As you have bandwidth.
Yeah, if you have the bandwidth to handle it. But this is crazy that for free, you just get a 48 by 48 router. Or 128 by 128. So yeah, this is NDI router. You can plug it away, and then you can send it to whatever destination is on your network. So you send those, or you configure them by right-clicking, and then you tell it where the router destination. You can label them. Destinations are destinations, but sources, you would pick the source. Like this one is my source, so I could say configure. And then this is Alienware VLC. So I'm using VLC as a playout system. So VLC has an NDI module. And so that one's there. So you can see the ins. And then this machine happens to have a decklink card in it. So I could do NDI to SDI transcoding with this NDI router as well. And then you can store it as a preset. So these could be like HDMI destinations, a Jumbotron, a projector. So you can just say, send this source to this destination and then save it as a preset. But yeah, it came out today and it's free.
That's great. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I had a question concerning bandwidth. Since it's a router, is it just switching those different sources so that all of those sources are not really on the stream? It's only choosing one and then encoding it and then sending it out to the destination? Or are they all on the network at the same time? Or is it just switching addresses in the router and then routing that NDI compressed stream to the output, so only a single stream is moving at a time?
Yeah, as far as I know, it pulls on demand. So if the destination is not actually actively pulling it, so if I have it set up, let's say an Apple TV running NDI, there's a Sienna app. If it's not actively pulling on it, it can be routed, but until it pulls it, no data will pass. But yeah, once you start loading it up, it'll go full bandwidth.
So you can have all those inputs without compromising your bandwidth because it's only pulling one at a time to route it.
Yeah.
And if you're routing it to multiple outputs, can you do that? Can you assign multiple outputs to a single input?
Yes.
Then is it a single stream that is then decoded at several locations like a broadcast stream, or is it required?
I'm not sure where the multicast part happens. If it happens in the router machine, I'll have to actually push it and watch the CPU usage to see if the machine, I'm pretty sure that's the way it works, is it if the router machine would start to up its CPU.
So it might encoding multiple output streams then.
Yeah, but it could also, there's something called multi-TCP, and multi-TCP can push out multiple copies. So like my Bird Dog has an option for multi-TCP, so you can actually pull multiple feeds from the camera itself, which isn't dependent on a computer. It's just the machine itself. So I think it depends on the machine, the source that it's being pulled.
Sounds very cool.
Yeah.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next, and he asks, what's the most cost-effective way to have a sandbox of services on AWS for a consistent rate per month?
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, this just came out, I think, yesterday. I saw Douglas put up a question. I'm going through Skill Builder myself. The modules are fantastic for free. And then he put up this release that they put out, which gives you a sandbox account, which is cool because now for $29 a month, you can have a little playground, if you will, and not have to worry about accidentally, leaving a machine on or going over. So I'm going to actually subscribe to that as well and see what it's like. But for controlling like employee costs or training somebody up with giving them the actual hook so they can do security groups and things like that, it looks like a wonderful playground. I'm going to put the link again in Mukana so other people can see if they want to dive in. Oh yeah, and these certifications do show up on your LinkedIn. So look up Jim Hankins. He finished the course that I'm in the middle of, the AWS Cloud Practitioner. Which if I see that on your LinkedIn, I know you're really, I can't say the word, but you're really good.
It's a lot of work is what you're saying. There's some lifting to going on.
Oh yeah, it's a lot. It's a brain. Yeah. And especially if you watch them at the 2x speed, fire hose.
That's great. Next question.
TJ Asher in Minneapolis, Minnesota says, when adding photos to an audio-only track for an interview, I did not get any snapping of the photos to each other on the timeline like I was expecting. Did I do something wrong, or is this because my main track was audio only? And I think he's talking about Final Cut Pro because he's been heavily into that. So the answer is only the primary storyline has full-time horizontal magnetism where the clips connect to each other. Now, there is a way you can do it, which is to create what's called a secondary storyline in Final Cut. And if you have two clips that are connected but not attached to each other, connected somehow to your primary storyline, if you just hold the G key down and tap one to another, you will create a secondary little magnetic storyline that is itself the whole secondary connected to the primary at that connection point. So if you want to have magnetic editing in a second story, do it through this connected storyline. That's the way to do it in Final Cut.
Go ahead, Jason.
Bill's answer is good. I'm going to give you kind of the more basic one. Be sure that snapping is on, press the N key. And an easy cheat is if you know exactly where you want it to snap, as your playhead goes across, just press the M key. That'll put a marker in there, and then it will snap precisely to where you want it on the audio.
Yeah, the hard part is you end up with a lot of markers.
Suddenly
yes. It becomes a thing. Now, Bill, if you added just a slug down at the bottom and then attached everything to it, would it start to snap there?
Yeah, a lot of people do music video work by doing that. They add a slug in Final Cut is called a gap clip. It's an actual thing. Yeah. So if you add a little gap clip at the very beginning of your timeline, your
and just make it the entire You just make, and it's clear.
Yeah.
It doesn't do anything. It's just there as a placeholder.
Yeah, that long audio thing will attach to that small gap. Then you can add an additional gap clip after that little small one, stretch it on your timeline, and cut it 2 beats in the music. That's how I often start out, with a very rough to the music edit. And then I replace those little cut gap clip segments with actual content. And I have a kind of a pre-edit done really quickly that way.
Yeah. Next question.
Craig McFarland, in Boston, Massachusetts, says, thoughts about production in The Rehearsal, a show that stages replica environments to rehearse big life moments. And he's got a link there. It's a YouTube.
I haven't seen it. And it came out. The one thing I will say with links, oops, here I'm trying to grab it now. One thing I will say is that if you're able to post things, anything with a link that we might have to look at well before 7:00, it makes it a lot easier for us to look at it. Because a lot of times I'm scanning through these, I watch the movies, I try to figure this stuff out. I don't think anyone else raised their hand, so I don't think anyone's seen it. It's hard for us to grok in the show, but definitely maybe even ask that question again, but just ask it, tonight, so that tomorrow we'll review it and take a look at it. Next question.
Hasmuk Hajar, our friend, is up. Oh, I'm sorry. No, I got that wrong.
No,
Taylor Sunderhouse.
No, it's Hasmuk. I don't know what got.
Oh, okay. There we go. Now the Hasmuk one is up. Cape Town, South Africa. Watching David's Ecamm tutorials has opened many possibilities. Some while back, we looked at Wirecast. How does Wirecast rate in managing streaming events?
I haven't used I want to say that I haven't used the last couple versions of Wirecast. My experience before that was not. I used Wirecast for years. It was something that we used for years before we kind of moved. So between like 2007 and 2011, for me, that whole world was like Wirecast and FMLE. So I moved to hardware encoders in 2011 and just didn't look back. And so, but back then, and in the occasional times I've used Wirecast since, the stability was really an issue. The problem with any software editing system is that you can ask the computer to do more than it can do. And Wirecast definitely suffered a lot from that. It's not that it can't do it; it's that you can often overdrive the computer. Were you going to say something else, Guy? You going to add anything to that?
Yeah, I knew you had some bad experience with it, and I had as well. There was a time when it went through a phase of instability. We'll call it that, and be nice. But I think that it's cleaned up in the last couple. Yeah, it's gotten better in the last couple versions, and the thing still needs a rewrite though, because I noticed that it's not using the GPU as much as it should. And then the other thing that we really want is it'll do SRT out, but it won't do SRT in. So we still have to use something like SRT mini server. But the new version does come with a stock footage thing, which is pretty cool. If you don't mind, I'll show it real quick. Mm-hmm. So you can say, add, and you could go in here to media files, stock library. So pretty darn quick. If you needed fireworks, you could just type in fireworks and then hit search. And here's clips. And then you could say, I want that as HD or a QuickTime movie file. And you could see here in 1920 by 1080, there are some of these that are full on 4K, but let's grab this one. So this will be a ProRes one, and I'll hit download. And so it's pulling it down. And now look, I have I have that fireworks that fast, and I can kick this out to, so I'll say output, and then I'll say NDI output, and I'll say start. And now I can push that into my vMix machine if I wanted to as a NDI feed. But really cool for that kind of thing. And there are some nice 2-ups and shot things that you can do here. And then there's lots of outputs that you can also do as far as the output settings. You can stream to multiple places, RTMP, Facebook, DAcast, and then of course there's SRT, RTMP, Windows Media Streaming, and then you can record at the same time. And it has a great keyer in it too. That's the other thing that I do like the keyer. It works well. And in that stock library, there's a bunch of green screen clips if you want to play with stuff. So there's a trial, I believe, and they switched to a monthly subscription. So you can just go play with it, and then if you don't like it, just don't resubscribe.
Right. Next question.
Next question comes from Taylor Sunderhouse again in Cincinnati. Has anyone used VidBlasterX for live video streaming?
I've seen it go by. I just haven't. I guess I haven't used it, and I don't know anybody who's used it. So I know it exists. I just haven't actually put my hands on it. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, one of the things that I saw, I followed Dr. Andrew Cross, who is the godfather of NDI. He's now over at, he left New Tech and he's over at Grass Valley, but one of his likes popped across my LinkedIn, and it was this VidBlaster. And it shocked me because it said that it can do, in AWS on a non-GPU instance, it can do 22 UHD NDI streams with a total CPU usage of 25% with no drop frames. And so I want to download it and try it out and see how true that is, because that's pretty crazy that something could handle that. That just sounds bonkers. But
go ahead, John.
I'm willing to give it a try.
VidBlaster's been around forever and ever. It was not thought of well. I don't know about this new version, but they don't have a great reputation.
Next question.
Next question comes to us from James Fossley in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Yesterday, the Korg OpSix was over 50% off and the deal is gone. Are inventory reductions in these days of shortages troubling signals?
Go ahead, Courtney.
It not a troubling signal, but inventory clearance is I don't know if this deal is still on. You can get it for $330, and this particular synth is a kind of an analog throwback. And there's been kind of a resurgence in analog. This one kind of mimics a digital synth, though. It kind of mimics the 6-operator DX7, the Yamaha. But they may be coming out with a new model, and they want to clear inventory. And I think at the time that web page was shown about 23 hours ago, so not that long ago, they had 1,000 in the warehouse. And so it sounds to me like they're trying to clear their inventory. And that the deal was only available from Korg's warehouse. So it sounds like the manufacturer is trying to clear inventory before they're releasing a new product that will replace that. So they don't want to be stuck with them. And the new one will probably be a lot better, but maybe not that cheap.
It's interesting to see someone do that from a U.S. perspective. It's interesting to see someone do that at the top of a month instead of the bottom of the month or the bottom of a quarter. Usually, what you see is someone trying to solve a quarter, like the revenue from a quarter, and they just suddenly, the sales usually come out at the end of a 3-month gap, not at the beginning. It's very interesting. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, when I worked in around retail, doing a lot of work for major retailers, things like flooring costs, things like the distribution of things, and you don't have to start paying for this merchandise until a certain point later in time. So if you can sell the products in that first period, it is actually advantageous to you because you don't have to pay the holding charges for the stuff in the warehouses and things like that. It gets very complicated, and I'm not at all surprised that is tougher post-pandemic, since so many people change their behaviors and so much inventory has been sitting in warehouses for years now, and they're trying to clear it out and get the system back in operation.
I think that we'll continue to see, to our advantage at times like this one, instability in the sense that they had so many back orders that they just turned the whole thing on and just pushed out as many as they could. And then they end up on the other end with a ton of surplus because they just overshot, because they've been behind for 3 months, 6 months, 8 months, a year, 2 years. And so they're just trying to fill that thing and you turn the factory on, and you need to produce a certain number of them anyway to fill that pipe back up again. I mean, a lot of factories, there's you need to produce 500, or you need to produce 1,000, or you need to produce 10,000 to make it worth turning the factory on, to tool it back up, to make it work, to staff it, to everything else. It's kind of like when you order it. If you order an embroidery shirt, buying one is really expensive. Buying 1,000 is not. So they probably had to push out a certain number of them. They overshot, and they were like just doing an error correction. But I doubt it's something that's horrible. I think it's just. But we're seeing this at Walmart. We're seeing this in a lot of other places where people overshot because they were so far, they just couldn't calculate what it was going to look like. Next question.
Sky Gleason in Seattle says, Paul Shadwell, as an Office Hours original gangster member, what do you see differently from the early days of Office Hours?
Go ahead, Paul.
It's more complicated.
Yeah.
I've been watching the YouTube as well, so I can see them switching and putting 2 and 3 apps on there. So that looks good. But from the back end, it's a
little more than just showing up.
exactly. I've forgotten how to do it.
Yeah.
And so I asked in the chat, how do I get in here? And one of the guys walked me through. That was very nice. And yeah, it was good. I actually, hopefully I'll be back a bit more often.
Well, we'd love to have you.
Cool.
Paul. It's really, really good to have you back. And hopefully you'll...
I wanted to answer the AWS question, but I wasn't sure my audio was good enough. So maybe
go ahead.
Time.
What was the AWS? Yeah, go ahead.
AWS and Microsoft Azure both have developer accounts. So you actually get free tiers. So there's a whole bunch of free stuff. On the Microsoft one, for example, you can get up to $200 worth of usage per month if you sign up as a developer, and you sign up for 1 year. And at the end of the year, you can just extend it. And that's free.
That's great.
So yeah.
That's fantastic. Go ahead, Sky.
I want to say it's great to see you. I'm following you on your Harley adventures in Switzerland. I think that's always a fun thing to share in community. But I know your wealth of knowledge is deep. So I'm grateful to see you, and hopefully you can be able to come back sooner.
I appreciate it, Sky. Thank you.
Good, Jason.
Yeah, as someone who's been around since day one, the amount of structure, to me, it feels like, if you go back 4 versions of iOS and you're looking at your phone like, wait, how did that not, it's so different. But, that's what iteration is. That's how, slowly but surely things get better.
Go ahead, John.
What looks different? We all look much older than we did 2 years ago.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Douglas Carmichael. He says, I've heard of U.S. Navy ships playing certain songs over the ship-wide intercom, 1MC, to motivate the crew during certain tasks. How would they inject a foreign, in quotes, audio signal into an intercom system designed for a single voice from a handheld mic?
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, you see, there's Sparks, and he's the guy that's in charge of the radio room. But on all naval ships, there's a communications officer that has a whole rack full of equipment that is designed to control the PA that goes throughout the ship. And, there are certain stations that can just press a button at each individual station, and it can control where that microphone speaks to. But the communications officer can route radio and any of his radios in the communication shack throughout the ship, and that's probably how that's done.
Good, Mitchell.
Yeah, the Navy department goes to great lengths to make sure that Rick Astley does not get piped into the sound system because they don't want to get rickrolled.
I don't know. Maybe they do want to get rickrolled. You never know. But I mean, and again, what we have found over the years is that there's almost always a way to get yourself into a comm system and out of a comm system. It may not be an obvious way, it may not be an easy way, but there is a way to do it. And so we've gotten into diver packs and interpreter comms and all kinds of other things by just figuring out, okay, what input do you have and how do we, usually not always, but often it requires a soldering gun somewhere, not on the devices themselves, but building some kind of wiring setup to convert this to this or that to that. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael back again with, where do you see the market for mobile development, especially iOS, talent going? And how easy is it to enter? Would a boot camp like Devmountain, and he's got a link there for that, make entering the field easier?
I actually had a bunch of conversations with some iOS developers recently about this, and it's somewhat in response to Douglas asking a lot of questions about it. And I mean, all of them come back and say, build an app and put it on the App Store. It was like flat out, like that is what they're looking for. Unless you've worked at so they're either looking for you worked at a company that has lots of check-in, check-out, processing, everything else. If you're an independent developer that doesn't have a CS degree, and oftentimes a master's, what they want to see is that you can actually produce a product, and you can push something out. It looks nice, and for iOS stuff, looks nice. Uses the human interface design guidelines. I mean, that's a big thing. Like, don't make things up. It's definitely like you're not using those guidelines, and then they're afraid of you because they just all those apps live on those things, and they and so you're doing something that uses the design guidelines that runs smoothly, that actually is released, that, you know, you might have updated a couple times. That's what they want to see. You know, like they want to see that you can actually put something out by yourself. And that's how you might get into an internship or a junior programming, you know, like that's not, you know, anything special, but that's how you, and a lot of people are looking. And that's why Apple has all the playground stuff that Apple does and the Grow with Google. Basically these companies are so hungry for folks to get in that they are bypassing all the colleges, and they're going to continue. You're going to see this bulk up where all these big corporations are just going to bypass the colleges and just start pushing, because they're trying to absorb. They're so short on talent that they're just going to, and the universities are not, and this is a relatively candid conversation with some folks that are in it. The universities are pushing out so few people that, and the skill set that they're pushing out is not that much better than if they just design their own platform, design their own development process. And so so when you look at the Apple playgrounds, when you look at Grow with Google, what they want you to know is what they need you to know for them. Like that, like they're like, now the Grow with Google one's a little bit more open, because no, Swift is open source. So Apple will argue that that's for a lot of people. Grow with Google is a certification that other people are using, you know, as well as Google. So Google's saying, you know, that certification could be useful for a lot of different companies that need that thing, kind of like an AWS certification in a lot of ways. But the main thing there is that it's really useful for Google. so it's because it's really your skill set is being perfectly designed for their output. And a lot of us have talked about this for decades, that the easiest way, you know, up until now, hiring has been a hunting and gathering process. You know, we're out there, we have headhunters, we have, you know, people who are interviewing people. That's wandering off in the woods and seeing if you can find something. You know, eventually, you know, and that's how everybody starts. But civilizations are built on farming. farming is how do I build a consistent product that I can use all the time? And the best way to do that is do it yourself in a lot of ways. And so a lot of the farming that's going on right now is you're going to see more and more corporations spending more and more money on training, you know, and you're not going to care about your degree. They're not going to care about anything else. They're just going to, because they can train you up as you go through that process. And so that's what I think that you're going to see a trend build on that's going to keep on growing. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, writing the code is critical, and you need to learn how to do that. But I think what we're hearing a lot is that code is destined for an ecosystem. And if you don't understand enough about the ecosystem, it's really critical to make mistakes or get delayed or realize you haven't done something. I had an experience where many years ago, I decided I wanted to do an iBook. So I went down that path. I did the content, but then the stuff on the back end of getting something in the iTunes bookstore, it was amazingly complex and difficult, to the point where, you know, at some point they said, put your ISBN number in here. And I went, what is that? And I had to spend 2 weeks outside of thinking about anything I thought about before to just get that taken care of and decide I didn't want 10,000 of them. I wanted the smallest number that I could afford. It's all those little ecosystem things that if you don't understand how your code is interacting with the environment that your products, your iOS apps are going to.
And again, yeah, that's why actually publishing makes such a big difference is that it's not just that you could write some code or that you can prove that you can fix a problem, but that you're actually able to get something out the door. Let's go to Jason.
Yeah, it's hard to understate this. As a published app developer, I thought the hardest part was done after, you know, the 700 pages of human interface guidelines and, you know, all the box and whisker and the code and the design. And then you realize that you have to conform to something that is not easy and is not small. It's not a little task. And you know, that really is what they are looking for. Code is code. They can teach you, and you know, code is going to evolve. What can't in many ways be taught is, do you actually have the stick-to-itiveness to finish what you start? That matters a lot.
Absolutely. Last question for the first hour.
Kyle Hammond in Chicago, Illinois says, I seem to remember a recommendation for a strap accessory for a camera shoulder travel bag. Not the bag itself, but something to add to the strap of an existing bag. Thoughts?
I don't know what we recommended. I don't know who recommended it. I don't. Go ahead, Jason.
I've recommended the Fotassi Quick Strap, which is a strap that is directly onto a camera, but I can't think of a single standalone strap.
Yeah. So you might have stumped us. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, I was going to say, I have replaced most of the straps on most of my devices with various ones, and there are a couple of connector things. Most small cameras and things like that have that little slot, and you have to put a connector. Often there's a camping style plastic fitting that can come out and come in. And in the aftermarket for additional straps, some of which are wider or stretcher or handle bigger loads, those standard connectors come into play. So aftermarket is your friend. There are a lot of straps, and people are serious about them, particularly if you're a professional and you have this thing with a heavy load all day long. It makes a big difference.
I go, Paul.
Yeah, I was just going to mention Peak Design. Actually, you have a bunch of strap connectors that you can look at, that you can actually connect the camera to or other accessories.
That's great. All right. We are now changing subjects to, this is a little bit of an experiment. And as I got closer to it, I was like, oh, I really want to cover this because I saw it last week, and I thought it was a lot of fun. And then I realized, I don't know if I can play this. We'll play a little bit of it with some audio because it'll be really hard to watch. But I'm not going to play the whole video for you. You can go watch it. It's a brand new video. And a couple things I wanted to say about what they're doing here is that there's a couple things that I think that we should watch. Number one, it's the Introverts theme song. Just in case you're wondering, like as an introvert, like I listen to when you listen to the words, it's kind of like exactly how a lot of us feel. So anyway, but the thing that's really interesting to watch what AJR is a pretty, I actually don't know. I realize I didn't do this research. I don't know whether they're an independent, they're their own label, or whether they actually belong to a label. Maybe someone can find that out. But they are really, they are unique. I've watched them for a long time, and people will send me things, and then I watch more of their videos and watch some of their live performances, and they just are like true artists. Like they just think of things that they want to do and just goofy things, and they just start executing them, and they do them really, they take something creative and they really explode, with what they're doing. And they're not doing it with, in some cases you'll see they're doing it with some pretty good equipment. Especially behind the scenes when you see this. But their music, they say, and I don't know whether it's true or not, they say they make all the albums, all the songs in their garage, in their living room, and they just kind of throw these together, but they're just so much fun. And a lot of time I have a dream that someday we'll see AJR, They Might Be Giants, and Bare Naked Ladies in one concert, because they're all kind of the same. To me, they all live in the same world. Those three bands are very much like I think you'd end up with the same audience. So anyway, and all of them have this kind of like creative process. Anyway, so they made this video. The video does a lot with motion control cameras, a lot more compositing. And they made a really, really creative video. And now here's the other interesting thing, and I think for a lot of us that are doing stuff on YouTube, they're using multiple platforms to gather interest. And I think that really is a really interesting approach to it, in the sense that they put the video up on YouTube, but for a week before YouTube, they're putting up behind the scenes, they're putting up little teasers, they're putting up all kinds of other bits and pieces. So there was a build up in TikTok and in other places of them showing those things, and then boom, they come out with the music video, and then there's more after that of some of the behind the scenes. And I think that is for those of us who build events and build things that are doing it, instead of just dropping the video and then having the video sit on itself, using all of your platforms to move people back and forth. Because what that does is it has people see the music video on YouTube and want to see the behind the scenes on TikTok. People who see the behind the scenes on TikTok want to go see the music video on YouTube. It's genius. Like what they're doing there is, and it's something all of us should take note of this is how it's not broadcasting the same content to all the platforms. It is doing something that in itself is valuable. It's not just a leader, but in itself is valuable on each platform that you want and then make sure people know that the other platforms exist, and they can deepen their experience of all of these things with it. And so I think they do it really, really well. So I think that we want to look at that as a learning case, but we also, it's a fun video, and then we want to look at a couple pieces before we play a little bit of it. Sky, did you want to say something?
Oh, I wanted to see it first. I've been watching it and rewatching it while you're talking, and yeah, it's fascinating. It's a lot of fun. I do have a comment, but let's watch it first.
Yeah, and I will say, I don't have any inside information. We don't have people from the crew here. I'm just managing people's expectations.
Well,
we're going to figure it out.
That's the beauty of art. What is it telling you it wants to be?
Well, and how it was done, and so we're going to guess a bunch of these things, and we may be wrong. I may be wrong on my assumptions. There was one that already I'll show you the behind the scenes that I think they actually pulled off an effect shot pretty well. That even I was like, oh, they just shot that in and it didn't. It looked a little funky, but it was like, well, that's But it turned out they were doing something way harder than what I would have done. So anyway, because it didn't work as perfectly as I expected it to, I assumed that they just kind of did it, but they worked hard at it. Anyway, and we'll talk about some things that I might have done differently. Anyway, so let's play a little bit. Let me know if I'm crushing anybody when I play this, because I won't be able to hear it. I still have this problem with. Maybe I can. Hold on. Let's see. I might be able to hear it. Let's see here. This might work, so we'll see. Am I echoing now, or do I sound normal?
Nope, you're clean.
Okay. I'm doing this weird thing with loopback, so it's just all right. Let's try playing this. Okay, so did that come out okay? Did you?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah. So of course, what we want to look at there is the fact that they're doing what appears to be a continuous camera move, but they're changing that background over and over and over again, and that's it's not trivial, and so you'll see a little bit later that they're using a motion control arm. So basically, what happens is that, let's see if I cut back to this here.
Can you do that frame by frame?
Yeah.
Like, what are the outfit switches?
Let's see if I can click on the right thing, and then I can do frame by frame. Here we go. All right, so you'll see it jump. See, that's that. They don't hit it right on, right? But they're getting close. So,
and that's what I wanted to say is,
see, it's not
continually watching the face and the eyes and the lips. Those are the things that are really locked on.
Yeah, but now that's easier. So here's how that works: is that you run a time. Well, I don't know how they did it, but how we would do it is we sync everything to a time code track. Now, whether it's a time code track by the time it gets to the motion control arm is unknown. It's usually there's going to be some kind of it's going to abstract that time code, but that time code is going to drive the motion control arm, either directly or indirectly in that process. And basically, it means that the motion control arm will always be doing the same thing connected to the song. And so then when you're recording it, you're playing a speaker. And again, I don't know what they did, but what we do when we've done these is there's a big speaker playing for him. We've done some with bands where they put, and I don't know why they did this, because it's kind of fun to have the speaker going when you're doing the music video. It feels more like you're there. But some artists will put phonacs in. So we'll have a phonac in the far ear. The phonac is a wireless IFB, and they can hear it and they can sing to it. I find that to be very, I think that some directors like it because it's super silent and they can keep on talking and they can work on things and they can do whatever. And they don't like hearing the song over and over again. They think that the conversation has been that they think that that makes the crew crazy. I'm impervious to it. I can listen to the same thing over. I can listen to tone all day. So I don't really know whether that's the issue. I find it really fun to have big old, I like louds. Like we're not going to use any of this audio. So I like, when we play the thing out, I like big old audio and as loud as I'm allowed to do in the community, like, so that we're just rocking. And I think it makes it easier for the artist to get into it and they don't feel as silly as they do. Because the other thing is I don't know whether he's doing this, but a lot of times we have the singers sing at full volume because otherwise their neck doesn't do the right thing. So if they don't sing if they just mouth the words, their neck doesn't stress the proper way and their chest doesn't do the right thing. And it's a subconscious detail.
They look like they're on Valium.
No, it's just that their mouth's moving. It just doesn't look real. And so usually what we want to do, and that's why I try to make the speakers as loud as possible, is because I want them to feel like they can just belt it out. And that no one's going to hear it because it won't be in tune. It won't, because they're trying to do a bunch of other things and they get really self-conscious. And so anyway, so point is that, so what happens here, yeah. So, and there's hard things about this. So obviously there's the people behind it. And that's one thing that they're all changing. The water is hard. So you'll notice the water changes. Water's hard.
Alex, we're not seeing it anymore because the screen share's off.
Sorry. So, so actually having everybody change here, the
water is changing, so it's just strictly a cut. I don't think there's any composting going on there.
Well, that's what I don't know. So when I look at the edges of his hands there, I am not certain, and especially given that I know that they use green screen and some of the other stuff, see how the color.
Yeah, and watch his face. The lighting on his face is constant. So that's where everything in the background is changing.
It dramatically changes the entire color of him has changed, and it may be on purpose, but it means that they're either rotoing him or, they've changed a lot here. It's a wardrobe change, but look at his face.
Yeah.
He's
looking slightly different too. So it's not a composite.
Okay. Anyway, so I think that I have a theory that they shot, and it's based on another shot that they did, and we'll take a look at it. At first, when I saw this, I was like, I would just shoot this in camera. Like, I wouldn't do any compositing here. I would absolutely shoot it in camera, and that's what I thought at first. But there's another shot later in the video, which we'll show you in a second, that they do use it in a place that I wouldn't have used it either. And so I think that they may have done it that way. So I think that they may have, I think he may be in front of a green screen, and I'm going to guess that they actually ran the green screen behind him, which to me feels insane. But anyway.
You do see him reflected in the ripples in the water.
Yeah, the ripples give it away.
But he could be, what I'm saying is I think that he might be in the same space, but there is a green screen behind him. And then that would allow them to do, what it would allow them to do with the motion control is do all those other composites behind him without having to, and then have him just do it once, or not once, but with each one, he'd change it and do it. But they may have decided they didn't want to do that. But I will say, if they did that, the composite is pretty good. Like right here, you look at his hands. What you always look at with composites, generally is motion blur. And so you want to see like what's going on in the motion blur. So if they did the green screen, which we'll find out later, it means they did a pretty good job, and again, that surprises me only because they did a bad job in another place. I'll show you. So I was like,
yeah, but if it's a green screen, how would you handle the reflections in the water, which also changed with the background? So if there was a green screen there,
it depends on how high the green screen.
It
depends on where the green screen was, like how far back it was, and whether it was, because it might be showing up right above it. But yeah, to your point though, if I was doing this, I would do it all in camera. Like I would do this all, and I would shoot the whole thing in camera. I wouldn't try to composite it and everything else. I only am asking myself that because I saw.
But see, you see the pink lady, the pink lady appear, and you see her reflection appear at the same point in time, and she's about 6 feet behind him. So I think it's just cuts.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think you're right. Yeah. So we think, we don't know. There's other ones we know. I would have done this all in camera. And the key is, and you'll see the motion control arm in later. What makes this really cool is that the motion control arm will do the exact same move along a track, and with the arm moving, it'll do it exactly the same every single time, and so you can, composite these things together and everything tracks. And because they're changing the whole frame, they don't need it doesn't matter. I mean, it can jump a little bit, but and then what he's doing is, to get back to what Sky was talking about, he's singing to a track, but that track, because the motion control arm is exactly in the same position every single time, and they have a audio playing, but most importantly, whatever is playing the audio is connected to, is either the word clock or is connected to the clock, so that it is telling everything else what to do in time, so that when you cut this video together, you have an audio track, and his voice will always be in the right place where he is. Now, the other thing that we often do here is to get him. Now, in here, they probably, my guess is either they did it a lot, or he was really told what to do here. Like, you want your feet. He might have marks right there of where he should be hitting his feet, and getting, and trying to get it close. This is where you're tempted to use green screen, is because you could do fudging with him if you had them as a clean plate, and you could, to Courtney's point, you could shoot them, capture the reflections of them, and then composite him in and capture his reflection. The one advantage of doing the green screen would be that you could fudge his feet a little bit, or his position a little bit, when you make the change, to try to get it a little closer to matching. That's the only reason that I would consider a green screen, for this. But you could composite him over top of them, even on a green screen. So it's all a doable thing.
You may not even have to use a green screen, because since you've got motion control, you could do a clean plate without him there at all.
But you have all
garbage man,
and then use it to adjust his position on the ones where he is there, and replace it with the clean plate.
But it would be hard to do with all those people. With all those people moving, though, it would be hard to do a difference or any kind of clean plate there. But anyway, so so then he. But it's not perfect. Like, it's close enough that it works, but it doesn't have to be perfect, and it's just fun,
It's interesting. I was wondering if he was going to step onto the dry concrete so I could look at that, and I wonder if that water stain is his mark.
It might be,
because he stops right on that last dark puddle, and so it's kind of an organic mark. Walk until you get to that, then make your turn there.
Right. Now, here's another one where it is, what I do find interesting is you see the water changing behind them. This one's a much easier one. This is still a motion control arm. This is like, this video, I will say, is we found a motion control arm and let's use it. so anyway,
I'm wondering if it's a robot arm.
It is.
It is.
Well, it is.
Yeah, there you go.
Control arm. Yeah, we'll show it. There's a behind the scenes that we'll show when we get to that. So this is all pretty easy, as long as the control arm does the same thing over and over again. Now, one of the things that we do to try to get, like in this one, you'll see him changing stuff. Most likely he stayed in this case, he probably stayed very still, and they just swapped out what he needed for the other arm. So he kept the rest of his body exactly where it wants. One of the things we do a lot is in live compositing, or when we're testing stuff on set, we'll do an onion skin. So we'll see the background video, and the foreground video is kind of mixed over top of it, so that we can make sure that they're lining up while we're on site, because we don't want to go back and post and find out that we have to fix things. So anyway, that's most likely there, but really great and fun. It's great and fun. It's not particularly, again, this is most likely here. This is probably all CG. So this is right here is probably I will call it CG because
a weird shadow around it.
Yeah, that shadow is way
right
too
there.
tight.
Yeah, the shadow is they took him and they copied him, filled him with black, lowered the thing, and made it a little soft. So the shadow is not accurate, in my opinion.
Also, his shadow is bigger around his head than his head is. So that's not possible.
It's almost all of it is exactly the same distance. So anyway, I don't think that I think that the shadow is, well, maybe this isn't right here. But anyway, so I don't think the shadow is real. I don't believe it anyway. we could be wrong, but it looks a little lighter here too. So
there's a ring of white around him. I mean, come on.
Yeah, so I think this is just him potentially over green screen, and then this is just some CG background, and then this is particle systems that came down. So so you have that, and then we went back to this. We've got this same move. We've seen all this. I don't know why I like the grass so much. Anyway, and then. And by the way, I don't think that they went to grass. They definitely, I will argue that they brought the grass in to the camera. Like you don't.
I think that wood floor is CG. I think
it could be. Maybe. I mean, it wouldn't be hard.
These
if it was me, I will say with all of these, it may be CG. But with all, yeah, it does look like it doesn't really have it. The floor doesn't look like it has a lot of lighting. With a lot of these, though, what I have found is if someone's laying on the ground, I do everything I can to put a physical thing under them and not try to green screen them because it's just kind of like, oh, I don't want to. But they could have just shot a lot of these in that last set of shots. This could all be CG. And we may find out that all of it's CG. They did the whole thing over green screen and they just put them into. They just shot those clips. I mean, that's another way to do this, is to shoot them once over a green screen doing their thing and then composite it over a background where they change everything. I mean, that might be another way to do it. This is all more of what we saw before. I think that's all in camera. I don't think they did anything special there. I mean, they did special things, but nothing. They spent probably so much time on the first one.
And your onion skin idea, they could put a teleprompter on that MoCo thing so that they could maintain their eye contact with the camera and line themselves up with the previous take. So they could do fine adjustments during the take if they see they're out of position.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Well, that's where I was thinking they overscan it, do like a 4K, but then the background the parallax would be different on the background, but the background's locked in. So.
Now, this is right here is where I was surprised that
I think that's a real screen projection.
This is just it's green screen, but it's
green screen,
and they didn't do a very good job of the green screen. So that's when I started thinking that they didn't do a lot of green screen because I was like, well, they're not very good at it because I didn't think it looked great. But the problem here is just a lot of what we would consider pretty hard edges. He's got a furry cap on. And these sharp edges here, they're not great. And again, in a music video, especially this one, it doesn't matter. Like this is probably my favorite video of this year so far. So I don't think it matters that they did that, but it's
also you see a little green spill on the guy on the left's face.
Yeah. So this is messy, and you'll see why in a second when we see some of the actual. But you can see how hard, some of the edges look, and there's white. And again, it didn't matter because it was just fun, and you don't have to. That's the best part of music videos. You can be very creative and not have to worry about whether it's perfect.
Noticed before, but they changed the props that were laying on the glass as well.
Here you can see there's something. There was a roto problem there. A garbage mat.
Oh, look at his glasses.
Well, look at this. There's a hole in his head. Hold on. Watch this. Watch this. No, it's like there it is. And, so here's the worst part of this. This is a garbage mat. Like this is a bad
in all senses of the word.
Made it, yeah, but it made it into the video. See, that way it made it into the video. There, that's just a bad garbage mat. Anyway, so that's sad. Anyway, so now this is the first shot where, I just thought that because I didn't feel like it jumped. I felt like it wasn't, it jumped a lot, and I didn't feel like they did, it wasn't as lined up and everything else. But it appears that they did, the one thing I did notice was, wow, they changed the backgrounds a lot. Like,
did you see the mark there?
Yeah, look at the
chalk mark.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. Well, you never know with a road whether that's just a chalk, but could be. Yeah, absolutely. And then, so anyway, so this is the shot. And then what's interesting there is, so it looks like a simple shot. Hold on, let me. Oh, this is. Did I miss it? There we go. So, all right. So we do have a TikTok of that. which again looked much hard. It looks like they did much more work than I expected. So, so here's the TikTok.
Just like my friends. So welcome back and take a breath. You come to life, you're bored to death.
So let's go back. So I will say, so there's a couple things that you're watching here. Almost make out which I couldn't make out. I wasn't sure which arm this is. I can almost make it out now because I can see it down here, but I can't quite pull it out. I mean, but this is motorized precision, or it's not a Mark Roberts because I know what a Mark Roberts looks like. I don't know which one this is. Anyway, motion control arm. This to me, and I'm sure I'm missing something, but wow, does that seem insane? Like to run behind someone. I mean, in my world, we would have built a rig like and I would have stretched a 12 by 30 foot green screen behind him and made it, not have anyone run behind him. like that would look like, to me, I shudder looking at that.
Well, this way they can get the lighting that correct on him because in the same lighting as the background plate.
No, and that's the genius of it. But I'm not saying that I would put him. I would put the green screen in the scene here like this, and it may be that they had the shot and he needed to be a little behind. But when you look at where they're going, they're not changing the angle that much, and it just feels like you could have put that in. So I totally agree with you that what they did here that was great was they did a motion capture. And this shot that made me wonder whether that first shot they're doing something with green screen, whether they should or shouldn't, is because in this shot, they're having him to do the change. It just felt like they might have decided that's how they want to do it. But to do the change, they did motion control, obviously, a couple different times of the day of that scene. And again, to what Courtney pointed out, is that the genius of this, and we've done this in the past, is you shoot the green screen outside in the same environment that you shot it in. So the green screen lets you separate elements, but you shoot it in the same environment so that it looks very natural, and you have the same focal length, you have the same movement, you have the same lighting. It's going to sync. Because that's like 80% of your composite, right?
Also, he's moving through the mottled light coming through the trees.
Yeah,
so that
the
would
shadow.
be really hard to match.
And massive props to the bounce fill guy, who's an ex-former running back, obviously. Yeah. Being able to go backwards at the speed that guy's going forward and not kill either of them.
Again,
wow.
I would have put a big green screen down there, like just a big long green screen and a big bounce like all the way across that he's running on, because you don't see his. Oh, you do see his feet. So there you go. So you have to.
The weird thing to me was that they had a Moco arm on a track.
Yeah, the track didn't move. What?
No, let me finish. But in the final composite there, the background's changing. It's not matching up frame for frame. It's like different takes with different programs, so maybe that's why on purpose to make you think that they're cutting it together when they actually composite it together.
Yeah. And I did that was one of the things. The reason I didn't think it was this complicated was because I felt like it wasn't done very well. It's like, I was like, it's like, oh, that one didn't work out, but it's a cool shot. Anyway, if you're wondering what a Moco looks like, a Moco rig, this is the kind of, so that arm will do the same thing every single time. So every single time it'll just make its move. Now, the reason that track is there most likely is that they probably didn't know what they wanted, and so they, you get there, you don't want to like, oh, we don't have the track. It's easier to just set the track up. The Moco has to sit on something. And so you might as well give it the track to put it on, so that if you wanted to do a tracking shot, you could. But it doesn't look like they tracked it. But you would always build it with a track so that you knew that it could do it, unless you were absolutely certain. But with a running shot like this, you'd always put it on a track. All right, let's take a look. Let's go to some more here.
You come to life, you're bored to death. So welcome back and take a breath. You come to life, but
And you guys, do you hear this, or is it?
Yes, we're hearing it.
I'm not hearing it because I turned it off, because I hear an echo of myself when I do it.
Again, props to the continuity of the actor.
your hands up 'cause I won't.
Now this one is another. So you have him, you know, so they're having a fun time dancing here. Now the we have a behind the scenes of that. Let's see if I can. Yeah.
Also, the designer that they're giving you some anchor visually to look at other than the eyes.
So you got a couple things here. So you have this is what's getting these shoes like right where they want them, is this little board. And then he's singing to it. I did think it was interesting that it appears that, and I don't know whether we're just seeing some, let's see if we can find the exact frame here. Hold on. Let's see. You go to this. And this is, but it's funny when you see these videos and you think, oh, they just went out with their iPhone. Yeah. No. There's all those shoes. You can see it. But you know, it's a full on shoot. So so anyway, so he's doing that. Let's see if we can find that purple frame.
Wonder why they didn't bring a big scrim and knock that bright highlight on the guy on the left.
Yeah,
on the
there's a
couch's
tiny
face.
scrim. I mean, they were doing it on purpose, clearly.
Well, yeah, that should have been a 20
Okay,
by
so he was
up
by
there.
himself in this one. Okay, so he was by himself on this one because that's the frame, right? So I was just wondering whether they, it looks like they probably had those guys in the frame with them, you know, for those. Now, I thought that the shoes were, I thought they did that separately because it just seemed like it'd be easier to do it separately, but it does look like all the shoes were just put on that little board. So if we go back.
Practical shots all.
Also, he does touch that towel in the background, so the guys couldn't be there.
No, yeah, I think if we look at this and we look at that shot there, because we can probably find the frame here, but it's probably like somewhere in that range right there. That's probably pretty close to the two shot. Well, yeah, and so for each one of those shots, I would have probably thought about doing the shoes, you know, separately. Just record them all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then rotor them in. It would have been easy to me. It would have been easy to do that without having to commit to it. But it looks like that's not what they did. It looks like they changed the shoes for each one, for each shot that they did there. And again, this gets back into what now this one's a lot easier because this is locked off. You'll notice that in the music video, it shakes a little bit. But one thing that I noticed pretty quickly when I watched it, if you watch it here, see how it's shaking? But the shaking is not, there's something about, for those of us who do a bunch of this,
post shake, yeah.
It's a post shake. That's a movement. That's just animating the anchor point. So that's like a little, you scale it up a little bit and you animate it, and it's not done well. The best way to do that, by the way, I mean, there's some tools now, that plugins that do it really well. The one that in full disclosure, this was I didn't come up with this. This is a John Knoll trick. Is that John would have us, when we want to do camera shake, he would have us build a target on a piece of paper, just literally like this. Build that target, stand 30 feet away, take a literally, and this is a camcorder circa 1998, zoom 30 feet, from 30 feet away is all the way into the end of the camcorder, and then just try to hold it. just try to hold it steady. And it just has, because you're zoomed way in, it just has this thing, but it has a movement that is based on your arms and your heart and your reactions and everything else. And it looked, I mean, it was night and day. Like when we did this for Star Wars, so a lot of all the camera shakes I used in Star Wars were all like these long, I had a handful of those clips, and I had tracking points, and I just took it into After Effects and applied it to the frame. And it would just give me this little like organic movement that I couldn't get any other way. But what you'll see when you look at the video is not that, right? This is just, this is someone just jiggling the Now this one we also have behind. Oh, maybe I didn't download this one. I thought I did. Hold on.
On that outdoor shot, I was just thinking, I'm hearing the DP yelling, "We're losing daylight. We're losing daylight."
Well, he's obviously not outdoors because he's standing on a piece of glass and the trees are lit from the opposite angle of his body.
Yeah. Yeah. So here you have the, this is the, so here's his, so this is, I thought this was pretty funny. So, and again, these are the kind of things like this, as a visual effects person, this kind of green screen here makes me just really sad.
What is
anyway?
Like a 3-inch plexi?
Hi, is this Home Depot at like the thickest piece of plexiglass you can possibly find?
Really?
Yeah, it's thick plexi. With a couple things with plexi that's important is that obviously that it's thick. I think it's probably only an inch thick. That'll hold a lot of weight, maybe an inch and a half. And then you want what you can see here is these kind of, anything that's on it. The bigger the points are that are on it, the better as far as that goes. And anyway, so that's how that's how they're shooting it also. But you'll notice when you look at this, you can see it here. Let's see if I can back up a little bit here. Oh, actually, maybe it's forward. So this is always the nightmare, right? Now, they probably made the decision because he's moving his head around, and what they definitely don't want is his head to get past this line, because that's going to be hard. So if they were going to cheat, they were going to cheat this back area. And you can see the roto didn't turn out perfectly for that, for that process of having that out there. But a really fun, and again, when people are willing to give us these behind the scenes, I think that it's a really fun experience for us to kind of DX it, and people can learn and people can figure stuff out. So a lot of fun there. Let's see.
Buy an extra drink for whoever had the glass or the jar of Windex and the pad in case he moved his foot to have to get the foot schmutz off the
kidding.
Yeah, exactly. So there's the, let's see here. Let's see. So I can hear it.
Yeah, I saw the shop rag just sitting there. It's like,
yeah, and they didn't do it. I mean, they still had a lot of schmutz in there, but let's see here. Can you guys hear that? Or am I not hearing?
Yeah, we can hear it. We're getting scrubbed audio at the same time you're playing. So
okay. I'm going to get better at this. This is our first experiment. There. So anyway, if you have questions about that, go ahead and throw them in. If anybody else has, Courtney, do you have anything else to add there?
I was just going to tell you just technical thing. When you're talking and the track is playing, we can't hear what you're saying.
Oh, you know what happened was I turned. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we've been able. Your voice has been there. It's just the level of the playback was higher than you.
Got it. Anything else? We're just kind of open it before we jump into it. But yeah.
My last thought is that, if this was the first time that they had a motion control arm or, really high end stuff, they did a really good job. That said, nobody does this perfectly. That's why we're doing it.
No, there are people that do it perfectly, but the budget for every shot would be more than this video. ILM does it perfectly. Like that motion control type of arm is done a lot, for these kinds of things.
I believe I've done breakdancing at every CES in front of one of those.
Yeah, exactly.
There was a thing at the end where they're in front at the beach and they're just changing the color of their wardrobe. I think that's done just with a power window shift and chroma shift of the.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, no, I agree with it. Let's see if I can find that real quickly here. This is it's near the end.
Yeah, around 2:15.
Oh yeah. So if we what Courtney's talking about there is this. Yes, that's relatively.
That's a huge
easy.
shift.
Yeah, that's just selecting it, tracking it,
Yeah, it's a
changing it, probably even,
power window with a hue shift. Yeah.
yeah, and you could literally just select that, do a color selection, select that color, change the color. And we do that kind of. I once did a whole set of like I think 20 Mac breaks where you'll see that I'm wearing the same shirt but different colors, and it was the same shirt. I wore a blue shirt over green screen, so I was able to key myself. But then I had a solid blue color that I could just grab onto, and it was gray and red and all these other. I changed all the colors, so it was an experiment.
I did commercials for Levi's where they had Levi's that came in different colors, and we just shot them with one color of Levi's, and they changed them all in post. They never had to change outfits, and they decided what color they'd be. I mean, they weren't cutting between the different ones necessarily, but they just decided to color them all in post.
Yeah, Bill.
When I first saw this, when I looked at the first part of it, it reminded me of something, and I realized that it was David Gabriel's Sledgehammer video. This is much more sophisticated. They've gone a long ways. But it's interesting. That was 35 years ago. That was 1986 that Sledgehammer came out. And the fact that in some areas they made huge progress. I mean, the motion control rig wasn't even imagined at this level back then. But some of the basic ideas are still there from there. It's really fascinating.
And to be fair, the motion control rig was definitely in the 80s. We had motion control rigs.
Did you have them that were that sophisticated that you could take out on a remote shoot like that? Okay, then I didn't realize.
Big and heavy, but they did them. I mean, there was one that was, because technically the motion, when you look back at the Light and Magic, they're doing a motion control rig. The Dijkstraflex was the first one. They built for 1975. And then, but they were using, it's still in use. I don't know if they fixed the problem with it, but the Cooper system was built in the 80s.
Bill Tondreau, I know him well, who wrote that.
Yeah. The funny thing is that the Cooper system, I almost bought it. It was when they were doing a sale, of everything in the thing. The Cooper system was one of the things, and someone bought it. I'm glad someone else bought it because I would have never. It was someone who actually was a motion control operator, and anyway. I bid $7,000, and I probably would have had to deal with a divorce if I'd actually gotten it at the time. And he bid $22,000, so he won. So anyway, I was lucky. But it's still around, and maybe we'll go up to it's in Sonoma. But the funny thing is that the Cooper system still ran on floppies. And so you had to put a floppy disk in to make it run. And but what was funny was by the end of the time we were using it, you would build the camera move inside a motion builder. So this really high end, software, you build it all in, and you'd export it out as a text file. And then you would copy it over to a floppy drive. And then you put it in. And we didn't know where the other floppy drives, it was really hard evidently to format the floppy drive. So it was one, and it was like this one of those like beige gray floppy drives, but it had so many black fingerprints all over it. You're always like, ooh, and just stick it in. It was so gross, but that's how you ran the motion control. Go ahead, Bill. Were you going to say something? Oh, you already said it.
No, that was that comment.
Let's go ahead and jump into the questions.
Okay, our first one comes from TJ Asher in Minneapolis, Minnesota. He says, it looks like the band members did an amazing job of hitting their marks for each shot. Were they that good, or is there some visual effects helping that along?
Well, again, some of that comes from that track, so having them listening to the track and singing to it and knowing, you just got to do the same motions, you got to do the same thing, roughly. And it's hard and it takes rehearsal, but it can be done so that their arms are kind of up in the same place. It didn't look like they were trying to match it as perfectly as they need, as they could have, and that's fine. And so, but because of that, they just had to get close to it in that motion, so they kind of had the same movement going on. So I think that it was, and then of course the other part. I don't think there's visual effects going on, but I think that there was probably a lot of, again, onion skinning, checking the frames against each other. You want to do that on set, because otherwise you get back and wow, fixing that in post is super. So it becomes just like it's a tar pit, And so a lot of times what's really, really important on set is to be able to see the results of what you're doing like that. Like when I do green screen on set, I key on set. I key everything on set so that I can see against, if I can, I'll have roughs of the backgrounds already shot, the background clips, and I'll do everything on set so that I can see it, so that I know that it's gonna that I know that when I go back, if it looks relatively good on set, I know I can clean up whatever's missing. If it looks bad on set, I usually try to reshoot it. Next question. Oh, Sky, you were going to say something. Sorry.
Well, I was going to agree with you, but I was going to give, again, props to the cast, because I think they did actually try to hit their marks. And again, the onion skinning of overlaying the last shot with the new shot that's upcoming. I noticed that they were always locking in the eyes, but I'm going to also say they used multiple techniques. This was not just a single concept. They did on one scene, they did it this way. On another scene, they tried something else. So
and I think that was one of the things. That's one of the things I really liked about this video in general was the fact that it was not a one-trick pony. It was really like we want to do something creative, and we're going to think of a lot of different ways to do each scene. And the interesting thing about it, though, is look at how many scenes there are. There's only 6 or 7 scenes in this piece. There's a couple like weird inserts, but outside of that, there's only 6 or 7 setups. They literally, I think that they set up they had to set this up like 6 or 7 different places, and run the whole piece, which I think is pretty genius from a cost perspective. To make that work is they're not complicated setups, they're not expensive setups. And like, for instance, the pool that we see here, most likely that house had the background that he did the sweater thing, and they may have done everything at that house, and that might even be their house, like knowing that band. So, and that would have brought a lot of the costs and complexity down to make that work.
Yeah, because the expense is your setup. So you're right. Getting your crew and your equipment to one location, and then just changing a different direction for day 2. Yeah.
Yeah, I would love, this is the kind of thing that I'm hoping someday we can offer to a band of like, we'll shoot the music video, but instead we'll stream it all like while we're shooting, so that people can watch us do it. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's in next. The Justin Timberlake video, Say Something, and he's got a link there, was not only shot in one take, but performed and recorded live with no playback. Could we see more artists doing the same in the music video medium?
Go ahead, Bill.
That's a fascinating thing. A different kind of thing, but obviously Justin Timberlake, and he did this in conjunction with Chris Stapleton, the country artist. It's an astonishing thing. They took over an entire, I think, 19th century factory, and it's brilliant in that it starts in one place. It does look like they are performing live. I'm not sure that's entirely true, and I've never seen it behind the scenes to say that at no part have they switched a live performance to track, because it's well orchestrated and you're following Justin. But boy, talk about extraordinary Steadicam work. This is one of the top players in the world, and to be able to sustain 3 minutes of shots with all sorts of cues and other players, a huge production design and planning win to get something like that at that level. Well done.
Next question.
Guy Cochran, Seattle. What is a clean black background plate?
Yeah, so the clean black background plate is, especially with a motion control arm, basically what you're trying to do is you'll shoot the background. Let me see if I can. This one will be. So you'll shoot the move without the subject in it. So a clean black background plate would be all of. Right now my key. Oh, I was drawing on the wrong screen. Anyway, so this would you would take a clean background plate. You might have these people not in it. But you'll notice they don't move very much on this shot, for instance. This is a good example of, they definitely had thought out or had trouble. I mean, they had a good visual effects person thinking about the things that were going to get them in trouble. So he's moving very slowly. So this is where I'm going to guess that there's a green screen involved, just because freezing him and having him walk and everything else, this is going to be, it's hard to do. This is a really fun clip. But oftentimes you would shoot whatever your move is here. And I'm not even sure. This one, I think, is, again, this is them pushing into they're not doing a motion control shot here, in my opinion. They're doing a lock off. So this is
there's a little, maybe the shake is added in post.
I think, I think the shake is added in post. I think this is wandering around is all 2D wandering around. I know I would do it that way because, wow, that would be really complicated. Like, I mean,
notice
from a
the
music
light around
video
his head doesn't move at all.
Yeah. So anyway, but oftentimes what you would do is a background plate would be without the subject. And that way you can do whatever you want with the subject and not have to deal with the background. And the background would be clean, a clean plate to make that happen. Next question.
Douglas
Actually,
Carmichael.
Oh, go
I'm going to
ahead.
do one real
sorry.
quick on that. Here was just the example of I just walked out of this frame and then just to show quick.
Yep, exactly. That's the. I'm not in the wrong thing now.
So we could do the quick disappear, reappear.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, that's taking a clean background plate. That's a perfect example. Next question.
It comes from Douglas Carmichael again. What safety features does the motion control arm have? Is it basically an industrial robot with a camera attached?
Yeah, not a lot. I'm mostly keeping people away from, safety supervisor. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, I couldn't help but laugh at this one. The safety is, the tether that, makes sure the camera is safe. But no, that could absolutely, truly hurt a person. And there is no obstacle avoidance. That is an industrial arm that could do a lot of damage.
Go ahead, Sky.
And an acquaintance of mine in Los Angeles went to Detroit and picked up several of them because they were constantly making automobiles with them, but they could be repurposed. And he brought them back to LA. So they're about $30,000 for a used one.
Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
I used to work on a lot of commercials with Image G, which was a big MoCo company here in LA. And they had this one called the Bulldog that was huge and could move a Panavision camera with, 1,000-foot loads on it, they could move 1,000-foot loads on it. And they had to rope it off, and they have a big kill button that you kill it if it goes anywhere. And it would run away occasionally. It would not be in a move. It would suddenly lose track, or there'd be a loose wire or something, and the thing would fly from one end of the track to the other, and the arm would move at about 40 or 50 miles an hour. And that's why whenever that thing was armed or powered up, you had to stay completely away from it because you never knew when it was going to run away.
That's great. I had a drone
that's
like that.
terrifying.
I had a drone like that. I did lose it eventually. 3D robotics drone. Just I never found it. It went off to wherever it went. Next question.
Albie Lopez in San Antonio, Texas. When editing, has anyone on the panel used AI software to key out the subjects such as Runway ML? It's been somewhat as good as After Effects and Rotoscoping, and he's got a link to the company.
I haven't used it, but it'd be really fun to do some more research and do some testing with that. I haven't, but I'm not familiar with it. So we will do more research. Next question.
Chris Widener, Lafayette, Indiana. OK Go did a lot of slow-mo effects in their videos and great practical video effects in the one moment video. Do we think they use the same type of robot arm shots?
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, arms are not that expensive to put in your music video. So I mean, oftentimes they're in the kind of $4,500 to $7,500 a day. In the grand scheme of things, that's not a huge expense to have a really cool arm. So you throw that in. Phantom might cost you with an operator $3,000 to $5,000 a day. So you can do some really slow motion with a remote control arm without under $10,000 a day. Now it may seem like a lot for us doing podcasts and little live streams, but in the grand scheme of production, $10,000 a day for something that adds that much production value is not a huge investment.
There is no Phantom in this, though, right?
No. I was talking about some other things. You can, if you want to do, have a lot of control. Although, and what I will say is I'm really, in my copious free time, I'm really tempted to try to reproduce some of these shots, with a small rig, like some of these little motion control.
Well, you've got that new camera coming to you. So
yeah. So the web camera, that'd be funny. I'll probably use something bigger anyway. But like with a little Blackmagic camera or something like that, just to see if we could, on like a $2,000 control arm instead of a, $150,000 control arm.
Do it with a slider and a gimbal if you're really good.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole thing is like, could we pull the same shot off? It'd be kind of fun. So something to think about. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael says, Andy Robot, it looks like Flessus, and he's got the link there, has worked with robotic motion control for LED wall elements on stage along with other devices. Can you see robotics moving into more areas on the stage or set?
When COVID started, we almost had the funding from one of our clients to build a almost completely robotic stage, because we felt like now no one for the next year is going to want to go into a studio with a lot of operators. And so we were looking at 3 motion control arms, or actually 4 motion control arms, a couple lockoffs. All the cameras, of course, all the lights, of course, are completely animated, or completely robotic. So everything, the idea was you'd walk in and there'd be 1 or 2 people who were there to, in the stage. Now, the interesting thing is there'd still be a controller. There'd still be a person controlling each one of those arms. It's not that we were going to not have them there. But one of the things we started really doing research on as we were researching the motion control arms is we realized we could just do shoots that, because the artist is on a click track, a lot of artists are, performing to click tracks. So they hear a click and there's some backing stuff that they don't have on stage, and there's some stuff that's there. Because of that, we realized that it would be really, it'd be possible for us to create these incredible camera moves that we could never do in person. And so it's definitely something we've been thinking about a little bit, Sky.
Well, again, the recipe that I'm enjoying so much is on Disney Plus, that Industrial Light and Magic back behind the scenes.
Yeah.
I'm just really enjoying the origin of where this all came from. And I love the fact that, Lucas comes back and says, "Where's my images?" He says, "Well, we don't have an image, but we've got a really good piece of equipment. And now let's create something in 6 months." And that was pretty magical.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Good, Bill.
Yeah, to me, I'm surprised that we haven't seen more development, I guess you could say, in smaller and smaller motion control mini rigs. And the reason I say that is they've already got pan tilt working. Well, yeah, but I'm just saying, why isn't out there in the sub $3,000 or $4,000 a basic erector set rig that does motion control? I mean, you just think with the DJI stuff,
there's a bunch of them. Yeah,
I guess I just haven't seen them.
Yeah, there's a whole. That's what I was saying. I was like, I want to pull out some little cameras and do them, but there's a who makes. We'll try to find them, but there's a couple of them that are making, but about $1,500, you start getting into a bunch of things that can do basic motion control. And these are arms that'll swing around and stuff like that. Will they do them as well as that? And will they go at the same speed as that? So what's really hard with the less expensive ones is do they have all the range of motions? That, that arm has, 3 joints to it. So 4 joints. And so are you going to be able to have those 4 joints work together? That gives you a lot of control over all 6 axes, or all 6 points of movement. But so you may give up some of that, with some of these controls, but you can still do a lot. And so we'll hopefully get into some more of that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I noticed theirs did a Dutch angle roll. I haven't seen those that often, so those kind of things would be great.
Yeah, I mean, having you can do that, and the control the Cooper system that I talked about earlier. Definitely, you could roll the camera, inside of it, which is really useful. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, there's not as much need for it these days because a lot of 3D software does such good motion tracking, and that you don't need the MoCo data to track something and paste something in, because the post-production ability to pixel track in 3D space has gotten so good that a lot of times they don't even need motion control. They'll just shoot handheld and paste stuff together. They'll shoot a background track handheld and just get it close. And as long as they're shooting oversized, they can rescale it and match it and rotate it and match it up completely to erase people and do things like that, which you used to have to use motion control to do.
And even with motion control, what you end up with is, what really gets complicated is 2 motion control shots at one time. So like, for instance, you might, or you might shoot something on a beach. So let's say you have a ship that's coming off the beach, and there's a bunch of little crabs carrying it off into the ocean. And let's just, that's just as a theoretical example. Now, what you would have to do that is you'd have a couple things in the foreground to sell that shot, and then you would you'd have a track, with something like a fisher, and basically you have a camera that just slowly, it's not doing a big move, it's slowly moving past people, and you have that plate. Now, what you might do is, in that shot, you might either in the shot or after the shot take an amphibious unit and literally, like one of those amphibious cars, plow it into the ocean to get splashes and stuff like that are from that area. So now you have those little things that you can composite down there. And so then what you might do is then take that move and you might track that move. So you do a 2D or do a 3D track of that move. You then convert that move. So that move is at one scale 1:1, but your ship might be a really big ship, like an old ship. And you would need, that might be at 1/12 scale. So what you would do is you scale down the translation to 1/12, so that now you've got a move on a ship that is 1/12 the size, and the move is 1/12 the size. And you take that data that you tracked, and you put it into that arm, and that arm goes past the ship at 1/12, and it captures that plate in front of, let's say, a blue screen. Now what you do is you key that blue screen and you put the ship in there, and the ship will be very close, not exact, but very close. Now what you have to do is you would have to track the ship and track the background, and then there's a delta, and then you would close the delta on the ship. So you would basically do a 2D track that would fix the last couple pixels, because otherwise the ship just goes like this because it's not perfect. So you're tracking the ship plate to the background plate, and then the ship will lock. But when it goes in, now you have to roto the water in front of it as it goes in, and then use those splashes that you had with the amphibious unit, and then those things cut off there, and then you add the CG crabs, and the CG crabs just come from the thing. So anyway, so that's theoretically, like, if just making something up that you might have for a shot, that might be a shot, the kind of shot that you might want to think about, and maybe we will figure out a way to pull one of those off for fun. So anyway, because just to see what we could do now that we've thought of a
again, the technology used to be millions of dollars or didn't exist, and now the barriers to entry are so low, it's just up to the imagination now.
Anyway, so this is what we're hoping to do more of. We'll probably do a breakdown of something once a month in office hours. So we'll just kind of dig through these things, answer your questions, try to figure it out. I really do think that when you understand these concepts, it's not that you're going to use them all the time, but you're doing a live event, understanding these things, go, I can build an insert, or I can do a fun open, or I can do something else, and knowing how they work means that all of us have that knowledge. It doesn't mean you have to learn how to do it all, but understanding how it works means you can ask the right questions. Anyway, thanks to for our producers, great questions this morning. So kept everything moving along. Thanks to our great conversation today. So thanks to our panelists. Can't do this without you. And of course, thanks to the incredible crew constantly putting this together, riding the bucking bronco that is Office Hours 2.0. Like, I could see a couple things happen at the top of the hour, and I was like, oh, somebody's freaking out back there. So anyway, but really good recovery and well done. So anyway, so now we're going to jump into After Hours.
That was fun.
That was great.
These days, I'll have to describe the movie Multiplicity that I worked as a consultant on.
Yes,
Lots
please.
Lots of moving, bad shots. All will go.
Oh, send it in. Second hour.
I bet Goodwill loved those guys.
It was the film that bankrupted Boss Films.
Do you guys actually watch the YouTube videos? Because you can hear yourself whispering at the end. By the way.
Yeah, that's kind of the point.
Now you spoiled the secret, Paul. Thanks.
Oh, damn it. Sorry.
Great seeing you again, Paul.
Yeah, you too.